You know, I've spent over 40 years studying human behavior, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. The biggest mistake people make as they age isn't losing their memory or their physical health. It's holding on to things that steal their peace. I've watched thousands of people reach 60, 70, 80 years old, carrying suitcases full of emotional baggage. And today, I want to share something with you that might change how you think about aging. Because here's the truth. The quality of your final years doesn't depend on how much money you have in the bank. It depends on what you're willing to let go of. And let me start with something that seems harmless but is actually poison. Caring too much about what other people think. At 20, you worry about what your friends think. At 40, it's your boss or your neighbors. But if you reach 60 and you're still living for an audience, we have a serious problem. I've counseled 75-year-olds who won't dress the way they want because of what people might say. Men who hide their musical tastes because their children think it's not appropriate for their age. Women who refuse to travel alone because their social circle doesn't approve. Can you see how absurd this is? Your later years should be the most authentic time of your life. After decades of pretending, pleasing others, and adapting, are you really going to keep playing a role? Seeking approval is like a drug. It's never enough, and you always need more. You could spend your entire life chasing it and never feel satisfied. Here's us an uncomfortable truth. Most people don't care about you as much as you think. They're too busy worrying about their own lives. And those who do take the time to judge you, do you really want their opinions directing your existence? Letting go of this need doesn't mean becoming selfish or indifferent. It means developing an internal center of gravity. It means your decisions respond to your values, not to the whims of an imaginary audience. Now, let's talk about something deeper. Resentment. That poison you drink while hoping someone else dies from it. I've seen people reach 80 still ruminating over offenses from 40 years ago, still angry at the father who wasn't affectionate, the partner who betrayed them, the sibling who took the inheritance. Let me tell you something you might not want to hear. You're not punishing the person who hurt you. You're punishing yourself. Every time you relive that offense, your body responds as if it's happening right now. Your blood pressure rises, your cortisol spikes, your immune system weakens. You're literally making yourself sick over events that already happened. Resentment is like having a tenant who doesn't pay rent but lives for free in your head. It takes up space, consumes energy, and won't let you sleep in peace. And the worst part? The person who hurt you probably isn't even thinking about you. They're living their life while you're trapped in the past. Now listen carefully. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or justifying what they did. It's not about calling that person and saying everything's fine. Forgiveness is an act of personal liberation. It's deciding that wound will no longer govern your present. It's recovering the energy you've been investing in grudges and redirecting it towards something constructive. Think about this. If you have 20 years left, how many of those years are you willing to waste in bitterness? Time is the only resource you can't recover. Every minute you spend hating is a minute you lose for loving, creating, enjoying. Let me talk about one of the most silent and treacherous enemies of emotional well-being: constant comparison. Your neighbor travels the world while you barely leave the park. Someone else has a family that visits every Sunday while your children hardly call. A former colleague retired with a huge pension while you have to watch every penny. Sound familiar? Comparison is the #1 thief of joy, and it becomes crueler with age because we start looking sideways, measuring our life against others precisely when we should be looking inward. We compare our aging body to the neighbor who seems immortal, our fragile health to the friend still running marathons, our solitude to the perfect family photos we see on social media. But here's what nobody tells you: those comparisons are an illusion. You only see the surface, the part others allow you to see. You see the perfect photo of a smiling family but don't know about the arguments, disappointments, and awkward silences behind it. You see the friend traveling the world but ignore that maybe they're doing it to escape their internal emptiness. When you compare yourself, you're taking your worst moment and putting it next to someone else's best snapshot. How can you not feel insufficient with such an unfair comparison? The real triumph isn't reaching further or having more things. It's arriving at peace, with a light soul, knowing you did the best you could with what you had. Now comes a topic many avoid, but that defines mental peace in old age: attachment to things. I visited homes that look like time capsules, rooms full of furniture nobody uses, closets holding 20-year-old clothes, shelves crammed with ornaments, china for special occasions that were never used, boxes full of just-in-case items. Most older people have something in common: a profound difficulty letting go. And when you ask why, The answers are always the same. This was a gift from my mother. This furniture was expensive. I might use it someday. My children will want this when I'm gone. But let me be brutally honest, yo. Your children probably don't want your things. They live with different priorities, less space, a different lifestyle. What you see as treasure, they see as a burden. And when you're gone, most likely 90% of all that will end up donated, sold, or in the trash. So why keep accumulating? Material attachment is a way of holding on to the past, trying to control something in a world where we increasingly control less. But things won't protect you from fear or give you company when night falls. They only occupy space, both physical and mental. Outer clutter reflects inner clutter. When your environment is full of unnecessary objects, your mind also fills with noise. And conversely, when you start letting go, cleaning, donating, something changes inside you. You start breathing differently. It's not about throwing everything away and living like a monk. It's about keeping only what brings you genuine joy, what you actually use, what represents the life you have today, not the one you had 30 years ago. Let me ask you something. Have you noticed how some people build their entire identity around being a victim? And I want to be clear from the start, I'm not denying your pain. I'm not saying your wounds aren't real or that your losses didn't hurt. But there's a huge difference between having suffered and building your identity around suffering. The victim mentality is seductive. It gives you something that seems like relief and explanation. Everything bad that happens to me is someone else's fault. The government, my children, my boss, my partner, life itself. And deep down, that removes responsibility, because if everything comes from outside, you don't have to move or change or do anything. I've known people who carry a complete inventory of their misfortunes and repeat them like a prayer. But while you see yourself as a victim, you give up the power to transform what's left of your journey. And life, even though it hurts, keeps waiting for you to take the reins. The problem is that chronic victimization doesn't just rob you of energy, it also isolates you. At first, people listen, understand, accompany you, try to cheer you up. But when every conversation revolves around the past, complaints, how unfair everything has been, people get tired. And when they leave, you have a new reason to complain. Getting out of that prison doesn't mean denying your pain. It means stopping using it as an identity. It means saying, yes, life knocked me down, but I'm still here. It means recognizing that although you didn't choose what happened to you, you can choose what you do with it now. Now prepare yourself, because what comes next might hurt more than everything before. Your children owe you less than you think. Yes, I said it. Of course you gave them life. Of course you raised them, fed them, stayed up nights, worked hard for them. But that was your decision. They didn't sign a contract saying, in exchange for existing, I promise to call you every day, visit every weekend, and adore you unconditionally when you're old. One of the greatest sources of suffering in old age is unrealistic expectations about family. I thought my children would be more attentive. I believed my grandchildren would visit more. I imagined that at Christmas we'd all be together again like before. And when that doesn't happen, you feel a profound emptiness. But that emptiness wasn't caused by reality. It was caused by your expectations. Your children don't live in the same world you grew up in. They're trapped in an accelerated pace with responsibilities, debts, stress. It's not that they don't love you. It's that their life is happening just like yours happened when you were young. Eliminating expectations doesn't mean resigning yourself to abandonment. It means loving from reality, appreciating what they give you without demanding what they can't offer, valuing a sincere call more than an obligatory visit, and above all, stopping using guilt as a form of emotional manipulation. Here we reach number 7, the hardest to let go but also the most liberating, your identity from the past. The person you were and no longer are. How many times have you heard or said phrases like these? I was the best salesperson in the company. I was the prettiest in the neighborhood. I had a privileged memory. I could exercise for hours. I was the life of the party. Notice the verb tense, everything in the past, as if your value depended on who you were. ND, not who you are now. This is one of the cruelest traps of aging, the temptation to live in memories of your past glory while undervaluing your present. I know people who repeat the same stories over and over. The game they won 40 years ago, the professional achievement of their youth, how pretty they looked at their wedding, how well they danced. And look, there's nothing wrong with remembering fondly. Memories are part of your story. The problem is when your entire conversation, your entire sense of value, your entire identity is anchored in that past. Because let me tell you something, aging involves inevitable losses. You lose physical capabilities, social roles, beloved people. If your identity is built on external things that inevitably disappear with time, you're going to collapse. The key is developing a flexible identity based on your essence, not your circumstances. Who are you beyond your profession? Who are you beyond your physical appearance? Who are you beyond your family roles? I've known extraordinary people who discovered their true essence after 65. Who started painting, writing, volunteering, learning languages, not because they were going to be the best at it, but because they finally gave themselves permission to explore without the pressure of performance or external approval. Now let's talk about fear. And I'm not referring to the natural fear of falling or getting sick. I'm talking about the fear that paralyzes you, that prevents you from living, that turns your final years into a long wait for death. Fear of being alone, fear of being a burden, fear of trying new things, fear of making mistakes, fear of what they'll think, fear of leaving your comfort zone. This fear is especially cruel in old age because it disguises itself as common sense or prudence. I'm too old for that. At my age, better not risk it. Why would I try it anyway? Do you realize how fear dresses up as wisdom to keep you immobile? The truth is this, the greatest risk is risking nothing. You can reach the end of your days without having fallen, without having made mistakes, but also without having lived. And that's the real failure. I've seen 70-year-olds learn to use computers, travel alone for the first time, start new friendships, end toxic relationships that lasted decades, move to other cities, adopt pets, take dance classes. Were they afraid? Of course. Did they do it anyway? Yes. And that made all the difference. Fear never completely disappears. You're not waiting to have no fear before acting. You act despite the fear. And every time you do, your world expands a little more. We're approaching the end, and I want to talk about bitterness. That chronic state of disenchantment with life. That sourness of the soul that contaminates everything. Bitterness isn't anger or sadness. It's deeper, more persistent. It's like installing a gray filter through which you interpret absolutely everything. Good news seems suspicious to you. Kind gestures have ulterior motives. Young people are disrespectful. The world is lost and all past times were better. Do you know someone like this? Or worse, are you becoming that person? Bitterness is contagious and self-destructive. It contaminates every conversation, every interaction, every experience. You go to a beautiful park and all you see is the trash on the ground. You're invited to a gathering and only notice what's wrong. Someone tells you their joy and your response is, you'll see when it happens to you. The cynic believes they're being realistic, believes they're wiser, more intelligent. I don't get my hopes up, they say with pride, but cynicism is actually armor, a way of protecting yourself from disappointment at the price of renouncing joy. And here's the irony. Bitterness doesn't protect your heart, it withers it. It doesn't make you stronger, it makes you more rigid, more alone, more small. And you know what the greatest tragedy is? Bitterness feeds on itself. The more bitter you are, the more you push people away. The more alone you are, the more reasons you find to stay bitter. Eliminating bitterness isn't an emotional act, it's a conscious act of will. It requires questioning your automatic negative interpretations. It requires actively seeking the good, the beauty, the kind, even when it's not always evident. It requires deliberate gratitude. And finally, we reach number 10, resistance to asking for or accepting help. That silent prayer, day that whispers, I can do it alone. I don't want to bother anyone. I don't need anyone. This poison is especially common in people who throughout their lives were the strong ones, those who solved everything, who helped others, the providers, the invincible. But let me tell you something very clearly. Independence is valuable, but absolute self-sufficiency is an illusion. Everyone needs help at some point. Accepting this doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Moreover, when you refuse to receive help, you're taking away from others the opportunity to feel useful, to express their love. You're cutting off the natural reciprocity that sustains human relationships. Think about it for a moment. You who helped others so many times, did you feel bad doing it? Did you think they were a burden? Probably not. You surely felt good, useful, important, valuable. So why do you think others wouldn't feel the same helping you? We've covered these 10 things you should eliminate to live a full old age. Maybe now you feel overwhelmed. Maybe you identified with several or all of them. Maybe you're thinking it's too late for you. Let me stop you right there. It's never too late to free yourself. It doesn't matter if you're 60, 70, 80 or 90. As long as you're conscious and breathing, you have the capacity to choose, to let go, to change. You don't have to do everything at once. In fact, you shouldn't Choose one of these 10 things, the one that resonates most with you, the one you feel is weighing you down the most, and start there. Small steps, daily decisions. Transformation doesn't happen with grand dramatic gestures. It happens with small consistent choices, day after day. Aging is inevitable, but how you do it is optional. You can reach your final years loaded with complaints, resentments, fears, and bitterness, or you can arrive light, at peace, with genuine wisdom and an open heart. The difference isn't in external circumstances, it's in what you choose to carry and what you choose to let go. I've known people with minimal pensions and fragile bodies who radiate joy. And I've known people with abundant resources and enviable health who are profoundly unhappy. The difference is always on the inside. Your old age will be as good as the internal work you're willing to do. And that work, to a large extent, is work of subtraction, not addition. It's not about accumulating more things, more achievements, more recognition. It's about eliminating what gets in your way so you can experience life more fully. You know, there's something I didn't tell you at the beginning that I want to share now. For years, I worked with people who were dying, terminal patients who knew they had weeks, months, sometimes only days left. And you know what I never heard in those final moments? I never heard anyone say, I wish I had worked harder. I should have bought a bigger house. I should have earned more money. What I did here over and off, with voices full of regret and silent tears, was this: I wish I'd had the courage to live my own life. I wish I hadn't held so many grudges. I wish I had said I love you more times. I wish I hadn't been so afraid. Those regrets are devastating. They come when there's no more time to change anything, but you, watching this now, still have time. Maybe not as much as you like, but you have today. And today is enough to start letting go of what weighs you down. Old age isn't a waiting room. It isn't an epilogue where you only repeat what you've already lived. It can be the chapter where you finally free yourself from everything that prevented you from being yourself for decades. It can be the moment when you look at the past and say, it no longer defines me. It no longer has power over me. Aging with dignity doesn't mean having no wrinkles or avoiding bodily ailments. It means reaching the end, knowing you were honest with yourself, that you forgave what weighed heavy, that you loved without reservations, that you let go of what wasn't yours to carry, that you lived in freedom. Death is inevitable. That's not up for discussion. But arriving at it in peace, light, reconciled with your story and in harmony with yourself, that does depend on you. The question isn't how much time you have left. The question is, what are you going to do with the time you have now? Will you continue carrying resentments, broken expectations, and old fears? Or will you choose to start letting go, forgiving, loving, and living fully? That's the power you have today, the power to decide, to transform your final years into the most valuable ones, to create an old age that isn't fear or resignation, but fullness, serenity, and freedom. And only you can give that answer. Today is your moment. Today you can begin. Do it for yourself. Do it for your heart. Do it for the life you still have left to live.